Hello guys, so this is the part 2 of the hard questions that I'm doing. So in the last video we solved 2 years of papers from May June 2025 and also October November 2024. So today I'm going to solve the next part, which is from May June 2024. This time I will be a bit faster because we don't have much time, and some of the questions are common, like questions that appeared in the previous video also appeared here, but the variant of the question is a bit different. Alright, so let's start. A video doorbell is attached to the front door of a house. The doorbell uses a motion sensor to detect when a visitor walks in front of the door. When the motion sensor is activated, the digital camera in the doorbell starts recording a video. A message is transmitted to a smartphone so that the person who lives in the house can watch the video. The doorbell also has a button that can be pressed. When the button is pressed, a message is transmitted to a smartphone to play the doorbell sound. The videos are stored on the doorbell's internal secondary storage device and overwritten when the secondary storage device is full. First, we have to identify two characteristics of the doorbell that suggest it is an embedded system. So, why is this an embedded system? It is an embedded system because it only performs a specific task, right? So the specific task is detecting motion or video recording, right? And the motion sensor and digital camera are built into the doorbell, right? So this is why it is an embedded system. So let's write it down. Alright, so open the doorbell only performs the specific task of motion detection or video recording or doorbell ringing. The motion sensor and digital camera are built into the doorbell. State whether the video doorbell is a monitoring or a control system. Justify your choice. So you can actually write control or monitoring, it's up to you. Both of these can get you mark. Since both of the value monitoring and control is correct, you do not get any mark for actually identifying the type. You only get marks for justification. So let's talk about monitoring system at first. So this is a monitoring system because the turning on of the digital camera does not affect the input to the sensor, right? That is one point. And the transmission of data does not affect the input to the sensor. The ringing of the doorbell does not affect the input to the button. So basically no output or no action is actually affecting the input. That is why it is a monitoring system. So basically the turning on of the device digital camera does not affect the input to the sensor or button. The transmission of the data or video does not affect the input to the sensor or button. The ringing of the doorbell does not affect the input to the button. Alright, so this is a monitoring system for this reason. You can also write control system. So basically we are told in a question, right, that the video doorbell does not only store the values from the motion sensor, it also processes data, then it generates a signal that will start the digital camera, right? So when the button is pressed, if the button is pressed, it causes a signal to be sent over the network to the smartphone, right? So an action is done. So this is why you can write a control system too. Alright, next, the video doorbell has both primary memory and secondary memory. Identify two items of data that the video doorbell will store in primary memory. So this is a basic question. We can store current reading data from motion sensor, then current or recent video. Then if you talk about ROM, you can store the BIOS or the startup instructions. Alright, next question. The video doorbell has a solid state flash secondary storage drive. Complete the table by writing the answer or answers to each statement about the principal operation of solid state flash memory. So this is a question where candidates actually made some mistake. So the first one is the two types of logic gate that can be used to create a solid state device. This can be a NAND gate, right? We can use a NAND gate or a NOR gate. These are called universal gates. The number of transistors contained in each cell. So we have two transistors in each cell. The type of gate that can retain electron without proton. This is a floating gate. The type of gate that allows or stops current from passing through. This is a control gate. The next question is about buffer. So questions of buffer is actually very much mistaken by students. Alright, so the misconception is buffer does not transmit any data or it doesn't transfer any data. It only stores data temporarily. So we can write captured video is transmitted to buffer. Video is transmitted from buffer to the smartphone. Store recent data in a buffer for the user to rewind instead of storing everything in secondary storage. Alright, next question. The digital camera has a microphone which is used to record the sound for the video. The user changes the sampling rate that the microphone uses from 44.1 to 88.2. So this has become double. Describe how this change in sampling rate will affect the performance of the video doorbell. Alright, so in this question, they specifically mentioned how the sampling rate will affect the performance of the video doorbell. They did not ask the effect of the sound, like if the sound quality gets better or not. These are very common mistake the students did. They explained what happened to the sound quality, but that is not asked in the question. You need to mention about the performance of the video doorbell. So the data transmission to user smartphone will take longer because the file size will increase, of course, because there is more data to transmit. The secondary storage device will feel faster. Fewer viewers videos will be able to be stored long term. Alright, next question. A bank allows customer to access their accounts using an application that they can download onto a device such as smartphone. The system that allows customer to access their account using the application is a client server model. Describe the role of the different devices in this model. So here you need to identify the server, you need to identify the client. So the server here is alright. So in this question you have to explain the different devices in this model. So this is a client server architecture, right? So we have a client and we have a server. So the client here is the user's device, right? So user's device, and the server is given by the bank server. So what happens is we the client sends packet which includes request to the server, right? And the server will respond to this and send a response. So basically the client is giving a request and the server is giving back a response. All right, the server is going to process the request of the client. After the request is sent to the server, the client waits for some moment for the response. The server processes the request and gives the response back to the client. So this is the client server architecture. So we need to mention this in words. So in word, the client smartphone device acts as the customer smartphone device. The client runs the banking application, which provides the user interface. The client sends requests to the bank server, such as login details or account balance request. The client then waits for a response. The bank servers, store or process the account data and sends the required response back to the client. Alright, coming to the next question. A company is developing a website that will allow users to create an account and then play a quiz every day. The data about the users and the quiz are stored in a database. A user must select a unique username and enter a valid email address to create an account. All users must be over the age of 16. A new quiz is given to the users every day. Each quiz is stored in its own text file. So while doing this question, let's read the question. Create a three table design for this database normalized to third normal form. Give your table design in the format like this. Alright, so we need to make three tables. So at first we have a user. Alright, so user has a unique username and enter a valid email address to create an account. All user must be over the age of 16. So we have a variable attribute named age. Alright, or it can be date of birth. A new quiz is given to the users every day. Each quiz is stored in its own text file. Alright, and the company is developing that will allow users to create an account, then play a quiz every day. The data about the users and the quiz are stored in a database. Alright. Now, a new quiz is given to the users. Each quiz is stored in its own text file. So every quiz will have a file, right? So I have one table user. I have one table called quiz. Now there should be a connection between user and quiz. One user will take multiple quiz and there should be a many to many connection, right? So we will use a third table named user quiz. Alright, since this is normalized, we cannot have many to many relationships, so we should use a linking table. Right, then I have user quiz. Let's identify the fields. The database stores the file name of each quiz and the date it can be played. So the quizzes have a file name and the date. File name and the date. The user gets a score for each quiz they complete, which is stored in the database. The scores are used to give each user a rating, for example, goal. So this thing, rating, is should be stored in the user, right? Because this is the data related to user. So let's start. I have a username and the username is unique. So I have username, which is unique. Then I have the email address, email. Since you are given this format, we should use this format and make sure it is capital. Alright. So this E should be capital E. Then I have the user must be over the age of 16. It is better if we store date of birth, right? So that we can calculate the age every time instead of just using the age. Then I have the rating for the user. Alright. So under quiz, I will have the file name, the date. So here quiz isn't given any unique data field. File name might or might not be unique, and date is obviously not unique, right? So let's make a new field called quiz ID. So whenever a primary key doesn't exist, you can create your own primary key. Quiz ID. Then I have date and file name. Let's underline this. Now user quiz. Quiz will have the username because it is linked with the user. Then I have the quiz ID. Both of them together is the composite primary key. Alright. Then I have the score. So this is the three table design. The company is using a database management system to set up the database. Describe what is meant by the following features. So data dictionary stores data about the data in the database, identifies the characteristics of the data that will be stored, including the field name, table name, validation, data type, primary or foreign key, and the relationships. Then in logical schema, we store the conceptual design. Database independent overview of the database is used to design the physical structure, includes design of entities, diagrams, and views. Next question. The company has another database farming for a different game. The database farming has a table named event, which is shown with some sample data. The database farming has a second table created named player that has the primary key of player ID. So this is the player ID. So we have event. This is event, right? This is the table data for event, and we have another table for player, which stores a player ID. The field player ID in event needs to be set up as foreign key to link to player ID in player. Write the SQL script to change the table definition for event to link foreign key to player. So this is the foreign key of the event table, right? So the thing is, this actually comes from the player table. It is included in the player table. This is the primary key in player table and the foreign key in this table. So we need to alter the table of event. Event. Then we need to add a foreign key. Which references player ID. Write an SQL script to return the number of events that each player has completed. So we need to return the number of the events. This means we will use the aggregate function called count. So let's select. We just need to output the player ID, right? So we need to use player ID. Then I have the count, number of events. So we use the variable name event ID. Alright, so from which table? This is from the events table. And we wish to use group by. So we group by the player ID, right? We will output the player ID along with the count. So we use player ID. All right. Next question. A computer game is designed that is being designed that users will be able to play using VR headset. Complete description of the principal operation of a VR headset. So a headset can have one or two dash that outputs the image to the user. So of course this is a screen which outputs data. Then the headset has speakers that output surround sound to give a realistic experience. The user's head movement are detected using a sensor. This sensor is a dash. So this will be a gyroscope. The data is transmitted to a microprocessor that analyzes the data to identify the dash of movement. So we can identify the speed of the movement. Some headsets use dash that records users' eye movement for analysis. So we use digital cameras. Alright. The computer uses a buffer when transferring data to the VR. Explain how a buffer is used to when data is transmitted between the computer and the VR headset. So I will just write it down. I don't need to explain it because I have talked about buffer a lot in this paper. Basically, the buffer is used as a temporary store for data going into the headset. Data is transferred into the buffer by the computer. Data is retrieved from the buffer by the headset. When the buffer is empty or full, an interrupt is sent to the computer requesting more data or stopping further data being sent. When the headset has enough data, an interrupt is sent by the headset to the computer to stop sending data from the buffer. Right. So the VR headset has electrically erasable, programmable, read-only memory. Explain the benefits of using EEPROM instead of other types of read-only memory in the VR headset. Alright. So we use a EEPROM because it is electrically erasable, right? So this allows multiple read or write operations. The headset can take advantage of new features without fully erasing the content of the firmware in the headset first, and without removing the chips or firmware from the headset. The content of the firmware in the headset can be changed by user without technical expertise, cheaper to manufacture, so headset will be cheaper to purchase. Now the next part. An assessment board scans exam paper and stores the digitized paper on a server. Each marker download the digitized paper to mark. The exam makers then upload the mark for each paper. The exam makers use software that operates on a thin client to mark the exam paper. Complete the two table by identifying two characteristics of a thin client. Describe each characteristic that will be used in the software. Alright. So two possible point. Data is not stored on the client computer because exam papers are stored on the server and not on the examiner's computer. Then client computer is reliant to access to server because examiner cannot mark if their device cannot access the server or if the server goes down. So more points could be the client computer heavily relies on the network or the internet connection. This means the marking software will not operate without internet access. Then the client computer requires few local resources, and the examiners can use devices with low resources and the marking software will still function. The client computer performs minimal functions. The marking software transmits requests and the server responds and sends the response to the user. The next question is describing PSTN. So the PSTN consists of many different types of communication lines. Therefore, a digital data may need to be converted to a different form. Data is transmitted in both directions at the same time, and using a PSTN, the communication passes through different switching centers or ISPs. Alright, next question. An assessment board wants to store the marks students achieved in an exam in a database named records. Part of the database design includes two tables, identifying relationship between exam and exam questions. So this is a one-to-many relationship, right? Because exams this is because exam ID is included inside exam questions, right? That means I will have multiple exams in exam question. So this is one to many. Sample data for the table is shown. Write an SQL script to define the table of exam. So we create a table called exam. The exam ID is a variable character which is not null. Then we should mention the number of characters, right? So here the number of character is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 characters is maximum. This question is not that strict about the constant because it is not mentioned in the question to follow the constant. So we use varchar instead of character. Then subject is also a varchar. Let's give it 20 since the name can be big. Then I have level, which is int. Total marks is int, and primary key is the exam ID. Also, varchar should be capital. This is the convention of Cambridge. All right, next question. The table exam question have been created, but the foreign key has not been linked. Write an SQL statement to update exam question and link the foreign key to exam. Again, this question is very similar to the previous one. So we alter table the exam question. We add a foreign key named exam ID, which references the table of exam, and the variable is the attribute is exam ID. The database also needs to store data about students, the exam the student have taken, and the mark the student achieved in each question. Describe the additional table that will be included in the database and explain how all the tables in the database will be linked. So this is a 5 mark question. So basically I have student, right? We need to store data about a student. We have a table called student, and we can have a primary key called student ID. All right, then I have exam and exam questions. So I have exam and exam questions. All right, so exam and exam question. One exam will have many exam question. This is already given in the question. So we need two links here actually. So we need to know the exams the student have taken and the mark the student achieve in each question of the exam. So individually we need to connect with the exam question and also the exam. All right. So we will use a linking table between exam and student. So we write student exam something like this, and we have one too many here, and also we have one here. All right, this is a link. To use this link, we will use the primary key from student inside student exam, the primary key from exam inside the student exam. These are the foreign keys of student exam. Then I will have another table to link exam question and the student, right? This will go like student question here. This will be many, this will be linked like this. So we will store many student question here. So this is a table. We store student ID inside student question and exam questions. So what's in exam question? Exam question ID inside the student question table. All right, so basically student table is identified with student ID, a linking table between student and exam. So this table, and here student ID and exam ID acts as the dual primary key. Student ID is the primary key of the student table as the foreign key of this table, right? So foreign key to join student exam. The exam ID is the primary key of the exam table as a foreign key to join student exam. A linking table between student and exam question with composite primary key. So this is the linking table. The table includes the primary key of student as foreign key to join student question. Another field will store the exam question ID and the mark for that question. So a computer has an operating system. Memory management, process management are two OS tasks. Explain how memory management, process management supports multitasking. So a very common confusion here is about memory management. Memory management is not the same as file management. Both are two different terms in computer science. Alright, so we need to answer accordingly. So basically, memory management stores data from all currently running programs concurrently in the RAM. This stops the data from overwriting each other in RAM or primary memory. It decides which process should be in memory, and it makes use efficient of memory. Process management stores data from all currently running programs concurrently in RAM, stops data from overwriting each other in RAM storage, and decides which process should be in the main memory, and they make efficient use of memory. The next question is the definition of an overflow. This is also a common question where students make mistakes. The answer is too long to be represented in the same number of bits as the binary numbers are being added. The theater wants to use a database to store data about the shows that are scheduled, their customers, and the seats that customers have booked in the theater. Each show can take place on multiple dates. Some dates may have more than one performance. There are multiple rows of seats. Each seat can individually be booked by its roller and seat number. For example, E2. Identify the relationship between the table performances and show. So each show might have many performances, right? So since we are told performance to show, we have many performance in one show. Sample data for the table performance is shown. Write the SQL script to define the table performance. Again, this became a common question. So we create table performance. We use performance ID variable character not null, show ID variable character, then show date, start time is time. Then we add primary key and foreign key, which reference the show ID. Write SQL script to return the number of times each show is scheduled. For example, in the sample data in part B, the show MK12 is scheduled 3 times. The results needs to include the show name and the suitable field name for the number of times it is scheduled. So here we will select the show title, then we'll count the performance IDs, and we will take this as the number of showings. We will take this from performance and from show table. So we will check that the show ID inside the performance table and the show ID inside show are the same or not. And then we group by the show title, so the data of same title gets merged. Customers give their first name, last name, and email address when they are making a booking. One booking can include multiple seats. Describe the additional tables that will need to be included in the database, and explain how this table will be linked within the database. So this is actually very similar to this question. So I'm going to skip it because the main concept is the same. I'm just going to write the answer. You guys can pause and think about the answer. Basically, customer table will be used as is used with customer ID as primary key and other fields including name and email. Booking table with booking ID as primary key and customer ID that stores the primary key of the customer table as a foreign key to join with customer table. It also has a performance ID as a foreign key to join with the performance table. Next question. A multimedia design company has an office with a LAN. The LAN can have up to 20 devices connected with cables and other devices connected using wireless access. A different part of the network uses Ethernet protocol. Collision is detected. Describe how the collision is managed using carrier sense multiple access or collision detection. Basically, what happens is, if I have a device and another device, if I send data and there is a collision, a signal is sent to the sending device, right? So the transmission is being aborted. So the sender will wait a random time before trying to send the data again. So if I send the data again and a collision occurs, then the random time will be increased. Identify true drawback of using CSMA or CD. So basically, imagine a where the random time is increased each time there is a collision. So after this happens for multiple time, random time will be increased so that there can be infinite waiting, and only suitable for short distance network. In long distance network, usually a collision might delay the transfer of data by a long time. Robots are used to serve food and drinks to customers in restaurants. The data from the robot is transmitted to the central computer using a wireless connection. Complete the table by identifying describing two methods of data verification that can be used during data transfer. So here basically we are using data transfer, right, not during data entry. So things like double entry won't be accepted, or visual check won't be accepted. We need to answer according to the question. So during data transfer we use parity includes parity byte or parity block. We also include a checksum. So in a parity block, we calculate the parity horizontally and vertically. So parity byte is created from the bits produced by the vertical parity check. This is sent with the data. The parity is rechecked when received, and the position of an incorrect bit can be determined using the block. Alright, then we write checksum. In checksum, a calculation is made from the data and the result is transmitted with the data. The receiver repeats the calculation and compares the result with the value received. If the two are different, that means there is an error. So switch is to allow two or more devices to communicate with each other. WAP is to allow wireless enabled devices to connect to a wired network. Then bridge is used to transmit the data between two networks with the same protocol. Next question. Shop manager has designed a relational database to store customer orders. The database will have the following tables. So these are the tables. Complete the entity relationship diagram for the relation table. So let's do this. Customer ID is included inside the shop order, right? That means we will have many shop order. Then shop order number is stored inside order item. So that means I will have one too many here. Now one item can be included into multiple order item, right? So this is also one to many here. Then supplier and item. One item will have one supplier, but many item might have the same supplier, right? One item will not have many suppliers, so this will be a relation like this. At the SQL script, return the total number of items that the customer with the ID HJ231 has ordered. So to answer this question, you can use inner join if you want, or you can use where. So we need to return the total quantity, right? So I will select. I only return the total quantity. I don't return any other fields. So I will use sum of quantity. Now we write the name of the table. Number of items, the customer with the ID of HJ231. So we need to use two table here, right? We use the order item. Order item has the item number, and we use the table for customer. So I will use customer, and wait, let's see one thing. So here I need the customer ID. This is included in the shop order, right? So I can use these two table, shop order and the order item. So we don't need the customer table, we only need the customer ID, right? So we use shop score order, then order item. All right. So where? So we use a where statement to match the ID, which is shop order dot customer. So the ID here is given AJ231, and missing a E here, and we also check the order number between shop order and order item is the same or not. So we check shop, so order dot order number is equals to order item describe what is meant by the IAS in a computer system. So IAS store holds all the data or instruction or program currently in use, and immediate access store is a volatile memory. This a computer has 2.1 gigahertz CPU. Describe how increasing the clock speed to 4 gigahertz can increase the performance of the computer. So here, if I increase the clock speed to 4 gigahertz, that means I can perform nearly twice as many fetch decode execute cycle per second. So one mark is for that. A second computer has a GPU with two 2.1 gigahertz core. Explain why the second computer does not always run twice as fast as a computer with 1 gigahertz core. So here I increase the number of cores, right? But the two cores must communicate with each other continuously. So due to the communication between the two cores, data might be delayed a bit. So let's say I have one core, another core. Whenever they are processing, they need to send data to and from. Also, there can be a problem. For example, many software might not be made to use multiple core, and the memory access speed might not match the speed of the cores. Also, there can be more differences than just the cores, right? So basically, multiple cores introduce additional overheads because of the need for combination between cores. Software may not be designed for multiple cores, so one of the core will be left idle. Memory access speed may not match speed of cores, so causing delay. The two computers may have more differences than just the cores. One may have more RAM, which allows faster multitasking. One may have a GPU. State one reason why some high-level languages are partially compiled and partially interpreted. So this is a very common question where students make mistakes. Basically, partially compiled programs can be used on different platforms because they are interpreted when they are run. So the code is optimized for the CPU as machine code is generated at the runtime. Alright, basically it is being half compiled, and during when I am running the program, it is being interpreted when run. So we can use different computers to run the program. A 3D printer contains 1 GB of dynamic RAM to store print data. State 2 advantage of the printer having dynamic RAM instead of static RAM. So dynamic RAM has lower cost per unit, right? And it has faster access speed. Static RAM has a faster access speed. So that means if we use dynamic RAM, maybe we do not need the fast access speed. Also, there is a higher bit density, meaning more data can be stored per chip in dynamic RAMs. All right. Identify the purpose of the first pass of a two-pass assembler. So in the first pass, we create the symbol table, and in the second pass, we generate the object code or the machine code, right? So this is the two-pass assembler. Now we are given with some instruction. Give one example of an instruction that belongs to each of the following instruction group. Only use the instruction given in the table. Each instruction must be of a suitable operand. Basically, you are asked to answer from the table. So we have data movement. We can use the store all the LDR. So let's use the LDR, and hashtag we can mention anything 50. Also, we need to use an operand. All right, you cannot use address here. We need to use the denary numbers. Then arithmetic operation, here we have add. So we need to use an address. All right, we cannot use a denary value, so just write an address, do not use the hashtag here. This can be an example. And we can also increment something. So inside increment, we need to mention the name of the register. All right, so we can either mention acc or ix. Other values won't be accepted. Now conditional instruction is, let's say, jump if equal 25, line number 25. So this is a conditional statement. Yes. The instruction LDR to uses immediate addressing. Give one similarity and one difference between direct and indirect addressing. All right. So we need one similarity and one difference. So what happens? Basically, I will load contents of an address into the accumulator. Both of these loads contents into an accumulator. Here, the difference is direct addresses direct addresses use the address that is given by the operand, right? So let's say if I have ldd something, I am loading data from this address. But when I use index addressing, I will add the value with the ix. This value will be added with the ix, and then the address will be returned. So we need to write this in words. So this is the answer. Now explain the importance of a feedback in a control system. All right, so the feedback ensures the system operates within the set criteria, right? So we will allow the output to affect the input. So what happens in feedback? If you have a system where we have the input and we have an output, right? So this output can affect the system input. This is the role of the feedback. All right, so let's write it in words. All right, next question. Give one example of an embedded system and explain why it is an example of an embedded system. So we did many questions of embedded system. Just let's write down the value. Alright, so an ATM cash withdrawal system, it is dedicated to one main task, which is carrying out banking transactions such as cash withdrawal. It does not require much processing power because it only performs limited tasks such as reading a card, checking a pin, and dispensing cash. It is built into a larger system, which is the banking network. The ATM contains a dedicated hardware including a processor, memory card, keypad, screen, and a cash dispenser. The next question. A factory makes chocolate bars. The factory uses conveyor belt that moves the product from one stage of production to the next stage. A second automatic system removes chocolate bars with an incorrect weight from the production line. Describe the role of the actuator in the system. The actuator is basically performing the action, right? Actuator will generate a signal that will cause an action to push an arm or a door to remove the chocolate bar. So actuator causes an action to push an arm to pick up the chocolate bar with incorrect weight. Now, the following database table is not normalized. Explain how to modify the table to put it in first normal form. So we need to notice something here. Converting to first normal form means we cannot have repeating groups, right? Each cell must have one data only. So this has multiple data. This should be removed. We need to make sure that each field is atomic. Then the student name can be broken down into two parts, the first name and the last name. And we need to identify the primary key of the table if we convert this into first normal form. Basically, we need to identify repeating groups of attribute, which is the subject and subject code. We need to ensure each field is atomic. Student name should be split into first name and last name. All right. Next question is for subnetting. So basically, what happens in subnetting? We are breaking down a bigger network into smaller networks, which is more manageable, right? So if we have smaller parts, this is kind of like decomposition, where we break down a problem into small parts. So using subnetting, we are breaking down a big network into smaller chunks, right? So this means the chunks will be easier to maintain. This will be easier to expand. Also, the network performance will increase. The congestion will be reduced because we broke this down into different zones or different parts. Also, if we break it down into different part, the security will be easier, right? Because the devices will not receive the unintended data. So let's write in 2 points. To make the network management easier, because faults can be isolated more effectively. To make the network easier to expand by allowing greater range of IP address to be available. Right, a computer has an operating system. An optical disk reader or writer is connected to the computer. Describe the role of the address bus, the data bus, and buffers in the process of writing data to the optical disk writer. So individually, we need to explain what this does. All right. So we have the address bus here. This carries the address, right? Address of the data to be written to the device. Then we have the data bus, which sends the data which is need to be needed written, and a buffer which stores data temporarily until it is ready to be transmitted to the device. So basically, a buffer temporarily holds data until it is ready to be transmitted to the device. Address bus, the address of the data to be written to the device in RAM is carried to the address bus. Then data bus, all data to be written to the device or buffer is carried on the data bus. On the next question, state what is meant by analog data. So analog data is continuous data, right? Meaning the value of the data is continuously changing. The next question is about EEPROM. We already did a question like this. Then we have a question of buffer. We can skip it. A computer system is designed to use the basic von Neumann model. Registers and bus are components in the von Neumann architecture. Identify two differences between a special purpose register and a general purpose register. So a special purpose register will hold some special data, right? While general purpose registers are used by most instruction, and special purpose register are used by certain instruction. Special purpose register have a special job to do, where general purpose register are used for any purpose they want as needed. Special purpose register holds the status of the program or something, right? While general purpose register just holds temporary data. Now the next question. Here you have to fill out this table. So I would suggest that you, in this chapter of von Neumann architecture, you memorize this part, the steps part, because whenever you remember the step part, it will be easier for you to do the, because using these steps you can easily explain. The PC is incremented, so PC becomes PC plus 1. So we use a bracket to note the value of PC and we add this with 1. The MDR, we have a double bracket here, so this means we need to perform a logical operation. So the data in the location pointed by the MAR, so here from MAR we are getting an address, so this address has a data, right? So we are going to take that data and bring it to the MDR. All right. So the data in the location pointed by the MAR is copied to the MDR. Now I have PC to MAR. So the contents of the PC is just copied to the MAR. Now on the next line, we have the contents of MDR are copied to the CIR. So we have CIR to the left and we take content from the MDR. Interrupts can be used by software programs or hardware devices. State one cause of a software interrupt. This can be any errors. All right, so we use a runtime error. For example, dividing by 0, then out of memory, or any overflow. These also works. The following statements describe the stages that a CPU performs when an interrupt is detected. There are 3 missing statements. Identify the missing statements. Right, so we need to write the letter of the missing statements. So at the end of the fetch decode execute cycle, the processor checks if an interrupt flag is set, right? Then we identify the source and we identify the priority of the interrupt, right? So yeah, this is it. The processor identifies the source of the interrupt and the priority of the interrupt. So we have D here. If the interrupt priority is high enough, the processor saves the contents of the register. So we save the current content of the register. Then the address of the interrupt service routine handling routine is loaded into the program counter. So we load the ISR into the PC, right? So this will be A. We have when servicing the interrupt. When servicing of the interrupt is complete, the processor restores the registers and the low priority interrupts are being re-enabled. Alright, coming to the next question. So here we are given a database of a table named BART type. We need to create the table for the BART type. We are given some data, right? So try this question on your own. I will just write the answer. So So I will create a table called bird type where the first one is bird id. This is a character of 4 characters, and this is not null. You are told, so since this is the primary key, this should be not null, right? And then we have name. This is a variable character. The highest number is 9. Then size, which is also a variable character. The highest number of character is 6. And then we have a primary key of bird id. Now next question. The database tables are repeated here for reference. Complete the SQL script. Return the number of birds for of each size seen by the person with ID of J123. So let's try this. We have an aggregate function. We need to return the count. So we return the number of birds. So we need to return count here. From bird type, we also need another table, right? Which is the bird seed, right? Because we need to return the each size that is seen by the person. So we have bird seen here, where dash equals to J123. So we need to match the ID of the person. So we have bird seen dot person ID, and bird type dot bird ID equals to, we will match this with bird seen dot bird ID. And we need to return the number of birds of each size, right? We need to group by the size. The next question. A computer has an operating system. Describe how operating system manages the peripheral hardware devices of the computer. So we did a question similar to this. Let's just write the answer. So we install the device driver to allow communication between peripheral and computer. We send data and receive data to and from the peripherals, such as to an output device or from an input device. We can include some example if you want. We handle buffer for transfer of data to ensure smooth transfer between devices that transmit and receive data at different speed. And we manage interrupt using this. Next question. The operating system has a utility software including defragmentation software. Explain how defragmentation can improve the performance of the computer. Here you don't need to exactly mention what defragmentation does. You need to mention how it improves the performance of the computer. So defragmentation rearranges block of individual files so they're contiguous. The accessing file time become faster because there is no need to search for the next fragment of block of the file. So less head movement is needed. The computer stores data in binary form. Give the smallest and largest 2's complement binary number that can be represented using 8 bits. So the largest number is when the positive bit is 1, the sign bit. The smallest is when the sign bit is 1, meaning it's negative, and the remaining are 0. The largest is when the first bit is 0 because this is a positive number, and the remaining bits are 1. Now give two advantages of using DRAM instead of static RAM. We already did this. So DRAM costs less per unit and higher storage density. The central computer stores the video file on secondary device. It gives two reasons why magnetic storage is more appropriate than solid state storage for this computer. So the scenario here is this. This is a CCTV camera system, right? So this means we will frequently read or write data. So if we use solid state, we cannot perform as many operations as we can in magnetic storage, right? And also since this is CCTV, it will store large and large amount of data. If we use a SSD solid state drive, then the cost will be too high. All right, in the next question, describe two benefits of subnetting a network. We already did this. Now coming to the next question, describe what is meant by Ethernet. Here you are not asked about the Ethernet cable. You are only talking about Ethernet. So Ethernet is a protocol. It is not the wire. All right. It's a protocol that uses wires. Ethernet is not exactly the wire. Then we also use something called CSMA, or carrier sense multiple access. And using Ethernet, the data is transmitted in frames. So each frame will have a source and destination IP or MAC address. All right, the next question. A horse trading school uses a database lessons to store data about the lesson bookings. The database is created and managed using a DBMS, The database lessons has the following tables. So these are the given tables. Days in this database are stored in this format. The riders and the field's rider level and horse level can only have three values: beginner, intermediate, and advanced. The following SQL script should return the number of riders that have the rider level beginner and have a lesson booked on 09/09/2023. So identify the four errors in the script. Identify and correct each error. So at first, here we should return the number of riders. So this sum, this should be actually count. Alright. So here we are performing student ID equals student ID. So we need to mention this dot student ID and lesson dot student ID. So we need to match this. We cannot use an or statement. We use an and, because we need to match the ID and also we need to check the date. So this will be and student or rider level is equals to beginner. Beginner is a string, so we use this. So you need to write this in words. So in this question, you have to convert minus 120 to 2's complement, right? So at first we write 120. 120 is equals to 64 plus 32. Then we have 16th bit. Then 8th bit. We add 400. This is 120. Actually, 120 is equals to 64 plus 32 plus 16 plus 8, right? So that means 1 1 1 1, then we have 0 0 0, and we have a 0 here. Now we need to convert this into 1's complement. This means flipping all the bit. We need to add the value of 1 with this. All right, so this becomes 1 0 0 1 0 0 0. And so the small mistake here is that whenever we are flipping all the bit, I remove the 1 0 mistakenly, so this becomes 0. That means we have a 0 here too. So in the answer we have 1 0 0 0 1 0 0 0. So the mark scheme has a small mistake here. This is why I include this question. Next one. A student has purchased a new laptop. Peripherals are connected to the laptop using ports. A printer is connected to a USB port. Describe how data is transmitted using an USB port. So we did a similar question to this before. So in a USB port, one bit is transferred at a time and can be synchronized or asynchronized. And USB 3 is full duplex and earlier version are half duplex. You can include 1 point and that is enough actually. The laptop has system software. Describe how the operating system manages processes in the computer. Here you need to write what is happening in the process management. So inside process management, we manage the scheduling of processes, meaning we decide which order to run the process. We manage which resource the process requires, such as allocating memory. We also enable processes to share data. We prevent interference between the processes. We make sure that two processes are not using the same memory, right? We handle the process queue. It allows multitasking, multiprocessing, and by using fair access, handling priorities, and handling interrupts. The next question, you need to complete a table by describing the typical features in an IDE. So in breakpoint, we stop the code at specific line to check the current process progress. In dynamic syntax check, whenever we are writing something, we are underlining the IDE automatically underlines or colors the syntax. In context sensitive prompts, this basically auto completes your statements, and in single stepping, we run the code one line at a time so the value can be checked. Now coming to the next paper. So write the logical expression for this truth table. For a question like this, you have to understand that this is a 1 mark question, meaning this should be very simple. So we are given 1 1 here, 1 1 here. We need to identify the similarities between these rows. So here a is 0, a is 0, a is 1, a is 1, so no similarity. Then we check C, the value of C is also changing, so no similarity. And now we check the value of B. Alright, that means this is actually when B is 0, the output is 1. That means this is not B. A university has two sides. Each side has several computers. So the computers are all connected as a WAN. One side has split the network into several subnetworks, and IP address in a subnetwork is divided into two parts. And if I describe the parts of the IP address in a subnetwork, so subnetwork will have two parts, right? So this part and this part. So this represents the network ID, and this represents the host ID. The network ID is the ID of the network, and the host is for the device. All right, next question. The video includes a sound recording. Describe how sound is represented using a in a computer, right? So what happens? We basically take different sound amplitude, right? We record the amplitude and we store this amplitude, right? So we will take different samples. This is are the samples taken per second, and we will store the value of the amplitude, which is represented in a binary number. So in the next question you are asked, explain why increasing the sampling rate and sampling ratio will improve the precision of the sound recording. So sampling rate means what? If you increase the number of samples taken, the digital waveform will be closer to the analog waveform, right? Because more samples will be taken and you can take more data points. Right? In sampling resolution, if you increase the sampling resolution, you will use more bits per sample. That means you can represent more number of amplitude. Next question. A shop rents cars to customer. The shop uses relational database to store information about the rental. The car rental database is not normalized. The current database design is this. Write a normalized database design for this table. All tables must be in third normal form. Use the field name given and underline the primary key field. So here I need to break this down into many parts. All right. So I have booking and customer. Inside customer, I have customer first name, customer last name, email address, and telephone number. All right. I have booking. Booking includes the car model, car color, car registration number. These three datas can be inside one table, which is car. All right. Then this is already okay, customer, and the remaining data: start date, end date, the customer first name. These are inside booking, but this field, customer first name, cannot be used inside booking, right? We need to use the customer ID because first name might not be unique. So this is the change we will make. We will use an ID. So let's write it down. So we have this three table here. Booking ID is going to be underlined, car registration is going to be underlined, customer ID is going to be underlined. This is the primary field. The data is validated and verified when it is entered into a database. A car registration number must be one letter followed by three number followed by two letter. For example, A123, A is a valid. One way the registration number can be validated using a presence check. So we need to mention two types without using a presence check. So we can check the format and the length, right? So in length check, we make sure it is 6 character, and format check, we make sure a letter followed by 3 digit and 2 letters. Describe two ways the car registration number can be verified when it is entered to a database. So you can use just example and describe. So this is verification during data entry. So use visual check and double entry. All right, next question is about data digital signature. I already did this question before, a very similar question, so I'm skipping this. All right, next question is our system clock. The computer stores data in binary form. The computer has a control unit, system clock, and control bus. Explain how the CU, system clock, and control bus operate to transfer data between the components of the computer system. So we have a system clock which gives a timing signal, which are sent on the control bus to synchronize the other system components. The control unit initiates the data transfer by generating signals that are sent to the control bus to other components. So we mentioned these three parts. And the next question: convert the 8 bits 2's complement binary integer into denary. Since I have covered binaries before, I will just write the answers. You can try it on your own, right? 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 0. Yes, draw a logic circuit for the logic expression. This question is easy, but students tend to mess up because there are too many brackets here. Alright, so do it step by step. We have not B, not C, and also not A. So we draw a not gate. So let's actually skip this question because logic gates question are too easy to handle. Just make sure you handle the brackets properly and the rule of precedence, because we need to draw not A first, then not B. We have not B and not C. Alright, so just make sure you follow this properly. And for truth table, break it down into different parts and then draw it. So here you need to write an SQL script to input two new fields in camera data to store the number of photographs currently on the camera and the date the camera was last used. So you need to add two fields. One is of type integer and the other is of type date. Alter table camera data, add number stored as integer and last used as date. Then we are given with a set of instruction set. Let's try this question. All right, we are starting with instruction address 77, which is LDR0. That means I will load 0 into the accumulator. Then I have LDX110. So this is index register. We will add 0. The value of IX is initially 0. All right, LDR actually loads 0 to the IX, not the accumulator. Now LDX 110 will add 110 with 0 and load the value from 110. So this is now 66. Now we compare this with 35. Nothing happens. 80, nothing happens. 81, we add this with 100. So 66 plus 0 is 66. Then store it in 102, 101. So we store this in this part. Then we have line 83, LDM of 1. So we immediately load 1. Then we have add with 100. So this becomes 1 plus 1, which is equals to 1. Now 85, we store this in 100. So we store 1 here. 86, we increment the IX. So this becomes 1. 87, we use this address plus the value of the IX to form the address of 111. We load the value from 111 into the accumulator. Then we have 88, compare, nothing happens. 89, jump if not equal to 81, so we jump to 91. In 81 we add 100, so we have 65 plus 1, which is 66. Then go to line number 82, which is store 101, so we store this here. Then line number 83, which is LDM of 1, we load 1 here. 84, we add 100, which is 1 plus 1, which is 2. Line number 85, we store this in 100 again. Now line number 86, here we increment in IX, this becomes 2. Line number 87, we will LDX 110, this means 110 plus 2, which is 112. We load the value from 112 into accumulator, so we load 35 here. Line number 88, we compare with 35. Line number 89, these are equal, so we do not jump to 81. Now line number 90, we LDD with 100, the value here is 2. Line number 91, we add this with 48, this becomes 50. Line number 92, we output the corresponding value, which is 2. And line number 93, which is the end. Explain the reason why increasing the amount of cache memory can improve the performance of the CPU. So increasing cache memory means cache is actually storing the fast access memory, right? So frequently used instruction or data is stored inside the cache. So if we increase the size, we can store more frequently used data. So which is why the performance can improve. Explain why high level language can be partially compiled and partially. We already answered this, so let's skip. Next question, we have to convert this unsigned binary integer into binary coded decimal and then show our working. So this is simple. At first we will find the binary value. So 128 plus 124816 plus 124 plus 1. So this becomes 149, right? Now we represent this as binary coded decimal. So 1 becomes 0 0 0 1, 4 becomes 1 0 0 0, 9 becomes 1 0 0 1. Alright, we are given with a table. Write the structure to add a new record. This is already done. Then we have to explain logical schema. This question was also done previously. So next part. Complete a SQL script to return the total number of telescope owned by the company whose ID begins with HW. So the only difference is here we have a new statement which is like. So at first we need to return the total number of telescope. So we use count of telescope ID, where I am checking owned by the company whose ID starts with HW. So I need to compare company ID like, so it starts with HW, so it will start with HW and we use a parenthesis. This means this part can have any number of characters. Alright, percentile HW means before HW there can be any number of character. If we had HW and underscore, this means two character. Write the SQL script to add one field to the table photograph to show the resolution of the photograph. So we alter table, the table name, then add a new field and the type of field. Describe the purpose of query processor in a DBMS. DBMS allows the user to enter criteria, searches for the data that meets the entered criteria, organizes the result to be displayed to the user. A combined system contains a system clock. Describe the purpose of a system clock. So we already answered a question very similar to this where we explained the purpose of a system clock. So let's just fill out the answer. System clock is used to synchronize operation by creating timing signal to keep track of the date and time to process operation in the correct order. Explain the purpose of relative addressing in an assembly language program. So whenever we are coding, there can be some relocatable code. Let's say, for example, if you use arrays, right? So there can be some offset between there. We want the data here, but we are in this address. So we use an offset like this, right? So we can use this for relocatable code. Sometimes we are given the offset and the base address. We need to form the address. We need to form the new address. Next question is about the benefits of subnetting. We already covered this. Next question. A subnet mask is used when subnetting a LAN. Two devices on the LAN are located in different subnetworks. The IP address and corresponding subnet mask are shown. Identify the following network ID and host ID. The network ID for the device with the IP address of this. The host ID of the device with the IP address of this. So whenever we are given question of subnetting, these parts, this means the part here will represent the network ID. Alright. So the 255 represents the network ID. So here this part represents the network ID and this part the host ID. So for the second part, the host ID is 4. For the first part, the network ID is 10. Alright, coming to the next question. Complete the description of computer memory. So the random access memory and ROM are both example of primary memory. One item stored in RAM is currently running software. Currently running software. Then one item stored in the RAM is the boot up or the BIOS. Then SRAM transistors are arranged as flip-flops. DRAM uses transistors and capacitors. Give the highest level of normal form in the database marks and justify your choice. So here there are no repeated attributes and each field is fully dependent on the primary field. There are no transitive dependency. This means this is in third normal form. Write the SQL to create the table student test. We already did a lot of questions like this, so we can skip it. The only difference here is there are too many foreign keys. For example, here student test has this and this as foreign key. Then both of them together is the primary key. So we create table, we mention the variables, the primary keys, both of them together, the foreign key is test ID, which reference the test table, and the attribute is test ID. Then foreign key student ID, reference student ID. Write the SQL to find the average mark of the student in test F7. Alright, next question is a program library. We can skip it. We did questions like this. Now, describe when interrupts are detected in phase, how interrupts are handled. We already did this. Explain why the LAN detection system is an embedded system. Skipping it. We have address. Now we need to write the bit manipulation instruction that would change the binary integer in ACC to this. So the thing is, in this question you cannot use binary, you need to use denary values. This is a very common mistake the student did. So here everything becomes 1, right? That means we use an operation with everything equals to 1. So that means operand will be 255. Then I have another question where this is transferred to this. Every bits are being flipped, right? So this is a XOR operation. So if I XOR with the value of 1, the zeros are becoming 1, right? So this is XOR with 1, this is XOR with 1, 1, 1, 1. So I'm doing XOR with this value. That means hashtag 255. Convert the following binary integer into hexadecimal. This is simple. 70. Then 3 place logical shift to the left, meaning this 3 will be gone. Number becomes 1 1 1 1 0 0 0 0. Next question is a binary subtraction, skipping this. Explain why school needs to keep its data and its computer system secure from unauthorized access. So here you cannot actually mention anything about hacking, because unauthorized access is given in the question, which refers to hacking. So data needs to be secure because otherwise people can amend or delete the data, and then computer system needs to be secured because malware or viruses can be installed. Explain why the table field matter has a composite primary key. So this has two primary keys, right? So this means it is a composite primary key. Next question. Ethernet uses CSMA or CD. Describe CSMA. This is already done. All right. Next question. How interrupts are handled. This is already done. And if and one method of derivation that can be used when transferring data from paper to computer. Basically, the main problem here is the data is transferred from paper to computer. That is basically data entry. So you need to answer according to that. So you can answer visual check or double entry. Let's go through the other question very fast. So here you need to mention the validation checks in date of birth, which is range check, presence check, length check, whatever. So even after validating or verifying, if there is any mistake in the data, for example, you enter the wrong date of birth, something like that. All right, let's just go through the question. Describe the two relation between the table. We can do this. Then a normal SQL. Write the SQL to insert a new. We can do this. Explaining third first normal form. Difference and similarity to spyware and virus. We can do this. Describe the benefit of Francis joining a professional ethical body. This basically you just write things, right? For example, there is ethical guidelines to follow. The client or staff must know he's reputable and things like that. So you just explain. Basically, there was a problem and he decided not to tell anyone, right? This is unethical. You need to explain why. So you need to explain about the access right. Different users are given different permission. This is a function of NIC, WNIC. Okay. Visual operation of a microphone, how my microphone works and all. You need to explain that. Just check the solved paper or the mark scheme. I will be providing this. State why the value cannot be interpreted as binary coded decimal. So this value right here, 1100. This is higher than 10, higher than 9. So this cannot be represented. So we need to add this, subtract this. We draw a ER diagram, data dictionary. We already did this. A basic SQL operation, adding a new field, then converting from hexadecimal to binary and vice versa. We need to subtract a number, so subtraction is already done. What is meant by copyright? This is a simple definition. LSR left shift. Right? So state the type of validation check provided here. So here we are basically checking if it is red or yellow or blue. So if this is not red, yellow or not blue, that means I will output invalid. So this is performing an sort of, basically we are checking existence check here, not the presence check, existence. Existence check is stating if the data is within the set of data that is provided, which is red, yellow or blue, right? So number. So we do a operation, basic operation. So what we do here is we need to set the bit number. Bit number 4, 5, 6 and 7 to 0. This will become 0. But keep 0 to 3 to existing value. This will be the same value as it was. So what operation can we do? So this answer is specific to the question. Alright. So this will be the same value as it was. And the remaining are 0. So we do AND with the value of, let's say, I will AND with 0, 0, 0, 0. This means the first 4 bit will become 0 if I do AND with this. The remaining are 1. This means the remaining part will be as it was before. So we write AND, and here we are given hashtag N, right? All right, guys. So we have missed one question actually, which was a bit different than the other question. So here we are asked of LSR of 3. So we are given an LSR of 3. That means we remove last 3 bits. This becomes 0 0 0 0 0 1 1 0, right? So the value of the number is 6 and the value of this number was 4. This is 4 8 16 32, and this is 1. So this is roughly 53. To convert from this number to this number, this is a division of 6, right? Roughly a division of 6. So the answer is divided by 6. Alright guys, so this is it for the video. I have more or less solved all the hard questions that I found from May June 2025 to the previous years. Hopefully your preparation is well and you will do a good job in the exam. If you have any confusion, you can ask me, you can reach out, and good luck for your exam. Just don't stress that much. The content is very easy, you just have to answer according to the question by understanding the context. Just be careful to not miss out on the context. Answer according to the context of the question. Alright, if you like this video or if you found this video helpful, do consider subscribing to the channel, giving a like, or leaving out a comment so that it encourages me to make more videos. Thank you. Good luck for your board exams.